that title package got put together by our creative team last minute. And I was like, I need a title package for the series that I'm teaching. And they're like, we've got footage from Man Camp 2 years ago. I said, yep, that's perfect. Anybody been to Man Camp here at Anthem over there? Yep, absolutely. One of my favorite things we get to do together as a church. We're 2 years in. I'm excited about Man Camp coming up again here soon. We are on track to have like 150 men sign up for Man Camp this upcoming year. So we're so excited about that. It's an opportunity for us for men to unplug, turn off the phones a little bit, and just get a weekend away to connect with one another. It's such a great thing. And we have guys that have never camped before that show up and everything in between. It is a really excellent time. Today, I am excited to kick off this series. And really where we're going today, I hope, is helpful for all of us. And what I will say is that I also understand that everybody has a different viewpoint and opinion or even experience with men or with a man. And so my hope is that today we can kind of agree on some stuff and hopefully apply some things to our life, especially those of us who are men. And the reason why I think that this series is really important is because all of us have different experiences with the world around us in the way that what it means to be a man is defined. And ultimately, most of it is all about external characteristics. Most of it is about stuff that we see. In fact, there's so much pressure even to kind of perform and be a little performative, to like wear manliness as a costume. There's all different types of complexities in this. And it's especially important for young men to have a blueprint for what it looks like to become not just a good and honorable man, but a godly man as well. And so that's kind of where we're going today. But all of it is, a lot of what I'm talking about today is connected to this book that I read a few years ago called The 5 Marks of a Man, written by a guy named Brian Tome. We had 30 or 40 copies of them that we were giving away for free. We're like going to divide it between services. And then they all got taken after the first service, which I guess is a good thing. But here's what I'll say is that if at the end of the service, you're like, I'd like to read that book, a guy came up to me after service and said that anybody that wants a 5 Marks of a Man book, he'll pay for it. So we'll get your info and we'd love to send that to you and make sure that you have one. The Bible actually has a good bit to say about what it looks like to be a good and honorable or a godly man. The Bible doesn't exist to let men know what it looks like to be men, but it does actually share a little bit about what it looks like to be a good and honorable or a godly man. And really, it doesn't give us like a clear blueprint. There's not a checklist that exists in the Bible, like to be a good and honorable man, you do these things, because that's really not what the Bible exists for. The Bible exists to share the true story of Jesus, his life, his love for us, the characteristics and the qualities of God, so that we can understand, know, and follow the creator of the world who sent his son on our behalf to redeem and save the world. But it does have some stuff to say about men and what it looks like for us to be men. In fact, one of the verses that's the central verse of this book and really of kind of where we're going today, it was written by a guy named Paul in a letter that he wrote to the early church in Corinth. And this is what Paul wrote. He said, "Be watchful, stand firm in faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love." Now, in today's kind of, tenser culture, climate, and all of those things, we might want to refine this verse a little bit and say, I don't really like that it, focuses in on one specific group of people. So maybe we could rewrite this a little bit and say, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like a kind, well-rounded individual, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. But ultimately, we should be specific in our speech. And if Paul wrote it, we should be specific about it as well. Paul was very clear that for men, that we should stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all you do done in love. Now, this act like men, what does that even mean and what does that look like? That's really what we're talking about today. And I just want to say that the Bible also has things to say about women as well, so you're not left out. Proverbs 31 has this to say, "Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears or loves the Lord is to be praised." And that is absolutely true as well. But today, we're not outlining what it looks like, a blueprint for being a good and honorable woman. We're outlining what it looks like to be a good and honorable, or I would say, godly man. We're talking about masculinity. We're talking about what it looks like to be a man. And ultimately, there's a lot of people that have a whole lot to say when it comes to defining masculinity. If you know me, you know that I love to read. I read a lot, and we've got to kind of weed out some books and stuff like that, but I really love to read, and I actually really love to read books about men and about manliness and about like what it looks like to be a good dad or a good husband. Those things really matter to me, especially in my time of being a pastor and being a family ministries director and a student pastor at one point. I was so focused back then in particular on helping middle school and high school students know and follow Jesus. I still am. But there were so many things that they were dealing with. There were so many things that were happening around them that were creating tension and chaos and hurt and pain in their life that actually had nothing to do with them. None of it was their fault. And I hear these stories, and I would hear all the stuff that they were dealing with. And the thing that became this like sense of curiosity for me is growing up as a dude myself, I didn't really even know what it looked like to really be a man. I think I had some concepts and I had some ideas, but as I led young men and they would ask questions about what it looks like to live the right way and to love and serve other people and to, what is it that Jesus had to say about this topic, I realized that I didn't have a lot of great answers. And what I really began to realize, and was a huge problem for so many of these young men, was that their way of defining masculinity was directly connected to the way that culture defines masculinity. Because man, our culture, our world, right or wrong, looks to external characteristics when it comes to defining what it looks like to be a man. I'm the oldest of four. My youngest brother was born when I was 11 years old. And so by the time I was about 14 or 15, he was 4 and super cute little dude. And I was just one of those kids that hit puberty like super early. So I was like 14. I was done growing. I had a giant beard, and the whole thing. And Jeremy would come out in the mornings. I joked about this at the last service. He's in medical school at Baylor Houston right now and be so mad that I'm telling this story. But he would walk out of the bathroom in the morning into the kitchen. He'd say, John. He'd go like this. He goes, I got any hair in there yet? No, Jeremy, there's no hair in there, man. He's like, okay, go back. And this went on for weeks. And I finally said, Jeremy, why do you keep asking me if you have hair in your armpits? He goes, well, I just want to know if I'm a man yet. And I realized in that moment, here's this little 4-year-old dude who's trying to figure the same thing out that so many of us are still trying to figure out even now. Like, am I a man? What does that look like? What does that mean? How do I know? And ultimately, as we are live in a time in a culture that's so extremely focused on external characteristics or things that we can like kind of put on, all this dumb stereotypical stuff of defining manliness and what that looks like, lifted trucks and hunting and all this stuff that's kind of stereotypical. And you might be into that. I'm actually into that type of stuff, but it doesn't make me more manly because external characteristics do not define what it looks like to be a good and honorable and godly man. It's not stuff that we put on or the hobbies that we're involved with. Instead, God, when he defines and talks about manliness and what it looks like to be a godly man, God looks to the internal character. And Jesus did this as well. In the New Testament, Jesus has this moment where he's sharing something that we call the Beatitudes. And he's saying, very truly, I tell you that in culture today, you're so focused on these different behaviors. It is good to, not kill your neighbor. Definitely don't do that. But in my kingdom, in my way of living, if you're gonna be a follower of me, we're gonna take it a step further. We're not gonna just talk, you're not gonna get a shiny star because you didn't kill anybody. If you even think about someone in a way that has hate in your heart, it's just as if you did the same thing. I see what is in your heart, and I actually care more about what's going on in your heart than what's going on the outside. Man is so focused on behavior modification, what happens on the outside. But Jesus is so much more concerned about what's going on the inside, because here's what you and I can both agree on, that what starts in here ends up out there. And Jesus is far more focused on what is going on and prioritizing what's going on in here, because he knows that if he can get your heart, everything else will follow. But here's just what's true about kind of this idea of masculinity and manliness and what it looks like, especially inside of the church world. The church gets this wrong so often too. Sometimes we do these, dude events, and it's like, we brought monster trucks, and we kind of play to some of the stereotypical stuff. And ultimately, that is not what makes a man. And it actually isn't what makes a difference in the world around us. I experienced this firsthand over the past 10 years of being a pastor, where I would see time and time again how guys on the outside that looked like they had it all together absolutely didn't, and I'm just as guilty of some of that as anybody else. But I would sit across from couples who were struggling inside of their marriage or struggling in parenting, having a difficult time with stuff, or, I'd hear from students about stuff that was going on in their home or things that were happening to them, things that absolutely should break our heart. And time again, as I began to refine and understand really what's going on inside of homes and inside of relationships, is that in these scenarios and in these moments and in kind of the brokenness of especially masculine culture, what is breaking things and making a mess of the world around us is childish behavior that has corrupted our adult lives. Childish behavior that should have been left behind back when we were 12 or 13 years old. And this isn't just true, by the way, for men. This is true for women as well. Wives who have just decided to carry over childhood behavior that they should have gotten rid of as a teenage girl at 12 or 13 that is impacting their marriage today. This is true for men as well. It's childish behavior, childish ways that we have decided to hold on to and bring with us into our adult lives. This isn't just true inside of marriages. It's true inside of parenting. It's true inside your workplace. We see how adults who have held on to childish behaviors just break stuff and make things more difficult for those that are around them. Childish behavior that should have been shed off a long time ago that's carried with us into adulthood will always make a mess of our life and the world around us. Some of you experienced this firsthand. Maybe you had a marriage that failed because of childish behavior that a husband or a wife brought into a marriage. Maybe right now your marriage is in crisis in some way, or your relationship with your kids is in crisis because of childish behavior that you haven't figured out yet how to shake off. And I would say that in my time in ministry, I've absolutely met 40-year-old boys and 16-year-old men. There's a young man I'm having this incredible opportunity to try to help right now who is 19 years old, was in the foster system. He's now 19. He works a full-time job as a carpenter and has adopted and is raising his 2 young brothers. He is absolutely a 19-year-old man, a man who has decided to do something different, to lead and live his life in a different way, the way that a good and honorable man should. I've absolutely met 40-year-old boys, and I've absolutely met 16-year-old men. Age does not define manhood. In fact, in cultures all over the world, there's these ceremonies that they do where they say, okay, you do this thing, now you're a man. Some of them, there's actually an African tribe that they make gloves out of bullet ants. It's the craziest thing. And they have young boys wear these gloves made out of ants. They cover their hands and their arms in it. And if they don't cry while they're getting bit by these ants, they're a man. In other cultures, in Jewish cultures, there's ways that manliness, and it symbolizes the beginning of you're not a boy anymore, you're a man. There's all these traditions, and all cultures are trying to put their finger on the difference between a man and a boy. So for today, for part 1 of this series, I really want to lean into this idea, what separates the boys from men? Is it the clothes you wear? Is it the way you carry yourself? Is it how much money you make? Is it the age that you are? What is it that separates the boys from the men? And for today, I want to narrow in and really kind of narrow our focus on one specific person that we find in history as well as in Scripture. His name was King David. King David was known as a man after God's own heart. He would later become one of the most famous and most powerful and most well-known kings, not just in history, but also in the Israelite community, and within the Jews, he was seen as this king to be revered. And in the process of him becoming king, there were prophets that were working with God to identify who would be the next king of Israel. One of these prophets was sent to a family, the dad, his name was Jesse, and he had a ton of sons. This prophet shows up and says, hey, God has sent me to your specific family because the next king of Israel is amongst your sons. And so Jesse's like, gold mine, this is amazing for me. Well, I'm going to be the father of, the father to a king. So he lines up all his sons. He gets all of his sons, and I don't know how he lined them up. Maybe he put, maybe his oldest to youngest, or maybe he kind of brought one out at a time and just said, hey, look, this one's the guy, right? And I don't really know how it all went down, but I would assume that he, even a dad, had this hierarchy in his mind of who was going to be the guy that was most likely to be king. Let's expedite this process. I'll bring out the most kingly. And one by one, the prophet's like, God, this guy, look at him. He kind of looks like The Rock. That's the one, right? That's the guy who's going to be king, And God's like, nope, that's not the one. Next one comes out. He says, is this the one? He hunts and fishes and drives a lifted F-250. He's like, no, not that one, He's trying, but he's not there yet, right? And he brings him out. And finally, Jesse goes, well, I don't really know. You didn't pick any of them. And the prophet says, well, God has told me that he is amongst your sons. Are you sure you don't have any more sons? And Jesse goes, yeah, so I do have another one. He's the youngest. He's out with the sheep right now, but I don't think he's the one you're looking for. And prophet's like, what's the worst that could happen? And so here comes David, the youngest of all of the brothers, 14-ish years old at the time, 13, somewhere in that range. And lo and behold, this is the young man that God had picked to be king. And in this declaration of finding the next king of Israel, the least likely of all of them, even in his dad's own eyes, this prophet picks out this young man through the voice of the Lord. And this is what he says as he announces that David should be next king. This is the type of young man that David was. Behold, this is the prophet speaking. I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him. This skillful in playing, David played the harp, which maybe in today's world is not a stereotypical manly thing. I just see David showing up and he's playing his harp, and the prophet's like, not the guy, for sure, not the guy. And it's like, yes, he's the guy. He is the person who is to lead this nation next. And I'll just be honest with you, as a 35-year-old man, I hope and pray that all of these descriptors, minus maybe the harp thing, that those things would be true of me, that would be said about me. Like, if my wife, and I hope she would say that I'm a man of valor, a man maybe of war, but like power or something, I don't know, prudent in speech and a man of good presence, and that the Lord is with him, that I fear the Lord, that I have a good relationship with him. These are the qualities of a good and honorable man, and the man that God picked to be king, and the man that we're going to look at for these 5 marks today. And in the moment when this prophet picks David out, his life as a 13, 14-year-old boy changes for forever. He's anointed as the next king of Israel. And in that moment, David's plan and his future and the vision that he had for his life changed in an instant. And that's the first mark of a man, is that a man has a vision for his life and a boy lives day to day. A man has a vision for his life and a boy lives day to day. Now, before we go through any more of these marks, wives, please don't poke your husbands. Husbands, please don't poke your wives. We're just going to let the Lord stir, in people's hearts the way that he is going to. But a man has a compelling vision for his life. This is not about, a specific career field. This is about calling. This is about, what is it that I have been put here to do? What is the thing that I'm going to be a part of? What's the thing that I'm going to make a difference in? Why am I here? And do I have a clear vision for what's next? Is it something that feels like a burden? Is it something that is going to cost me something? Is it something that's connected to sacrifice? A man has a vision for his life, and a boy lives day to day. A boy is easily distracted by little things that catch their attention and has no real direction for his life. Growing up, and I joke about this often, I'm ADD, X, Y, and Z. My mom would make me do homework out at the kitchen table so she could watch me the whole time, because if I was left alone for a minute, I was done doing work and I was off to the next thing. It's so easy for us, and you see this probably in your young sons, it's so easy for them to be focused on what they want to do right now in the moment. And it's cute and fun and understandable when you're 12, but not when you're 40. A man has a vision for his life. David, as a 13-year-old, understood that God had placed a calling on his life. And there were a ton of things that I'm sure David wanted to do and to be a part of, tons of things that were honestly normal things for someone to want to do, but he understood that God had placed a higher purpose and calling on his life. And so he sacrificed some of the things that he wanted to do for what he knew God had called him to do, to take care of an entire nation of people. So for you and I, as men, if we are going to own what it looks like to be a man after God's own heart, to be a man like David, we have to have a clear vision for our life. This doesn't mean that you have to have your career field all figured out. That's not what this is about. This is about being able to answer the question, where do I get to make a difference in the world? Where has God placed me? What is the calling he's placed on my life? And I just want to say that the best thing you can do with your life as a man, I believe, and have experienced, is submitting your entire life to following Jesus. And right behind that, it is to get married and to have children and to take care of your family, take care of your home, and to sacrifice for somebody other than yourself. A clear and compelling vision for your life. Now, here's what's just true about today's masculinity. What's true about kind of today, the culture in men, is that sociologists have termed the type of masculine culture that we see in the world today. And it's this. It's masturbatory masculinity. This is all about cheap thrills, quick gratification, the inability to delay gratification, an inability to wait for what's next in the attempt for what is good. This is why we have a multi-billion-dollar industry that we've got more kids in the room than I was expecting. You know where I'm going. You know what I'm talking about. There is a cheap thing that we can chase down in every category of what God's best is for our life. And when we settle for the quick thing, when we settle for the immediate gratification, instead of being willing to put aside childish behavior, we miss out on the opportunity to be a part of something that makes a difference. And some of you have experienced this. Maybe you had a dad who had an inability to put aside the things that he wanted in this life, the cheap thrills or whatever it was, and it blew up your home and it blew up your life. And because of his desire to just live day to day and wing it and live for himself instead of living for something bigger than himself and living for his family, it hurt you and it hurt your family. We have to reject this way of living. The second mark is this: a man works and a boy plays. Again, this is about sacrifice for me and for you. And women, obviously, we could say this is true for women as well. Please don't send me an email. A woman works and a woman plays. You can work and play too, okay? But here's the deal, that when it comes to being a man, we have got to understand that in this life, there are going to be things that we want to do that we have to put to the side. You cannot provide for and take care of the hearts and lives of your family or those that have been put around you if all we're doing is goofing around all the time. This is about adding value. This isn't about earning. This is about adding value to those that are around you. Very simply, godly men add value to the world around them. They're not scavengers. They're not just like walking aimlessly around hoping that something falls in their lap, because they have a clear vision for their life. They understand that men who have decided to submit and surrender their life to following Jesus add value to the world around them in the hearts and lives of people and in the lives of their kids and in their homes. Men work and boys play. Jesus had something to say about this as well. Jesus himself understood the value of work. He had this to say in the New Testament. He said, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working." Jesus himself was always focused on, we talked about it last week, the immediate needs of others. Good and honorable, godly men put their needs secondary to the needs of those around them, and we work. Now listen, if you know me, you know I like to play too. I probably spend more than I should on some of my hobbies and playing. But all of that is in support of my ability to do whatever it takes to make sure that my wife, and someday my little boy who's going to be born in March, has everything that he needs to be successful. It requires sacrifice. Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that too. Third mark, a man works for the team. A boy wants to be MVP. This is the look at me culture. This is the I'm the primary person in the story. Some of us have experienced this. Some of us have been around people that constantly need the spotlight. In men, this is such an unhelpful thing. Some of us will be the MVP. Most of us won't. What this principle is really about is the importance of having people that are around you as a support structure. This life is far, far, far too difficult to have MVP mentality, to live on an island, to be in isolation. We've got to have a team. We have got to have at least one dude. Men, please hear me on this. We have to have at least one dude that knows the whole thing in our life, that knows and understands and holds us accountable to the very simple principle that what stays in the dark grows in the dark. The hardest part about my job in the past 10 years has been sitting across from men who have not understood this idea. They've blown their families up or blown their lives up. And I sit across from them, I'm like, dude, like you could have told me you had this going on. Like, where was this? They said, John, two of them specifically said, I knew I could have told you, I didn't want to. When we choose to stay in isolation, when we choose to do the lone wolf thing, we always lose. And maybe you haven't lost yet, but do you still want to gamble with it? Do you still want to leave it to chance? Man, here's what I want you to know is that lone wolves, they lose. I read a book a few years ago about wolves. I don't know. I'm not really a wolf guy, you know. Some of us grew up with wolf kids, you know, like I love wolves. Not really me. But I found this so fascinating that all of these like zoologists have studied wolf packs, and wolves that don't have a pack, they die sooner. They don't flourish. They're always skinnier. They aren't doing well. They get diseases more quickly. There's something about being and having some type, and this isn't like, you know, tribal pack, like, oh, the bros. This is about really having at least one person who you know knows you. Lone wolves always lose. They lose their marriage. They lose their job. They lose their relationship with their kids. They just lose. And you and I, if we are going to really understand what it looks like to thrive in this life and to be good and honorable men, or something even better, a godly man, we have to understand that we need a team. We can't be the MVP. David, even though he was considered a good and honorable man and a man after God's own heart, experienced this on grand display. It's a famous part of David's story. There was a time in the spring where men and kings normally would go off to war. This is what Samuel has to say about this. He's in the spring, at the time when kings, which David was, go off to war, David sent Joab, who was one of his closest friends, his closest confidants, the man who was kind of like, David knew would call him on his stuff, was sent out by David with the king's men and the whole Israelite army to go fight a war, and David stayed back. He hung back in isolation. And I don't know, in less than 2 days, David's on the roof, sees a lady taking a bath, and is like, I would like to know her. And he did get to know her, and they had a child together. And David panicked and freaked out because the man who was married to that woman was also one of his closest friends. And so David did what we all do when we make a really stupid mistake. We double down on it. We make it worse and so did David. So he brings this woman's husband back from the front lines and says, hey, I'm going to gift you something. You get to spend some time with your wife. And this is all part of his plan to be like, nope, wasn't me, it was him, you know. And Uriah said, no, my closest friends, the men that I care about most, the men that are on my team, they're off fighting a war. I'm going to spend some time with my wife, but I'm going to sleep outside the walls of my house, because I'm going to be a part of the team. I'm going to delay some gratification for me because of what I think is right for my friends. So David's plan was ruined. So then he doubled down again, sent Uriah back to the front lines, pulled everybody else back, and Uriah was killed. You see, here's just what's true about us when we get in isolation. We get stupid. And I am just as guilty as anybody else. You guys hear me say this all the time. I am uniquely aware of my ability to create my own version of chaos, and so are you. And it's why we need people around us. And it's why this fourth mark is so important for us to understand, is that a man is a protector and a boy is a predator. I am not saying your 5-year-old is a predator. Take a deep breath, okay? But what I am saying is that when young boys see something that they want, they take it. When I was 4 years old, I stole a Hot Wheels car that said, Jesus loves you on it, from the Christian bookstore. It was in front of me. I liked it, and I stole it. And my mom found it and was like, this is not a thing I ever bought you. And I was like, oh, the lady at the Christian bookstore gave it to me. And she knew that that was not true. And we drove back to the Christian bookstore. And I had the unique privilege of apologizing to the 16-year-old that worked there, did not care at all. But I learned in that moment what all of us know when it's cute. It's like, no, that's not yours. You don't get to take that. But man, when that childish behavior exists in an 18, 19, 20, or 40-year-old man, things get bad. And here's just what I'll tell you is that to the women in the room, some of you have been married to men who haven't figured this out, or you were hurt or taken advantage of by males who allowed boyish behavior to corrupt their adult life. And I want you to know that I that my heart completely breaks for you and with you. And I want you to know that you were not hurt by a man, you were hurt by a male who is still operating as a boy. And on behalf of the men in the room, I'm so sorry. Because here's just what's true, is that good and honorable men, they don't do that. Men are protectors. Men who've allowed childish behavior to corrupt their adult life, they're not. My uncle once told me that, he said, in our family, we're going to decide to be sheepdogs instead of wolves. And I liked that. I was like 13. I was like, yeah, sheepdogs. He said, there's no difference between a wolf and a sheepdog. They have all the same characteristics. They've got sharp teeth. They all about look the same. But for whatever reason, the sheepdog has decided to put aside the thing in him that wants to hunt and kill and take, and to leverage what he is for those that are around him. Men in a world full of wolves, please be a sheepdog. The last mark, a man takes a minority position and a boy needs to be in the majority. This is really the tension of what it looks like to follow Jesus, to do some things differently. I, again, am uniquely aware of my own ability to create chaos. I have some pretty ridiculous guardrails that I have put in my life, and they stand out. There are moments where those guardrails, they just feel like these giant yellow signs that just say, weirdo, and I am so okay with it. I'm so okay with it because I have sat across from men over and over, and some women who don't have any guardrails in their life, and it has destroyed their lives and their homes. And God can redeem all things, but what if he didn't have to? Because you've decided to not do what everybody else is doing and to take a minority position, and sometimes it's going to be weird and sometimes you're going to stand out, but I promise you it will be worth it. It might cost you something. It may actually cost some sacrifice. It may cost you something in a business deal. It may cost you something in a relationship. My brother Jeremy, I just am so floored by what an amazing young man he is. He has decided to take a minority position in a lot of areas of it in his life. Poor dude's 25, the catch of the century, ladies, by the way. And there are girls that he's been on dates with, and when they understand his focus on taking a minority position, they have literally told him, hey, I'm not interested in dating you. And he would say, it's worth it. Because here's just what's true. There's a natural tendency for us to want to run in the majority because the majority is always the easiest. It's the easiest place for us to be because it doesn't cost us anything. For us to live out what it looks like to be good and honorable or something even better, godly men, it's going to require some sacrifice. This is true for David as well. There's this really kind of funny moment if you're married, moment for David with his wife where David kind of makes an idiot of himself, and his wife didn't handle it the best, and basically the story goes that David is getting changed and he's not dressed all the way. And there's this parade going through town because the Ark of the Covenant had been stolen and they've got it back. So David is just overwhelmed with joy, and he runs into the streets in his skivvies, and he's celebrating, and he's like, don't celebrate what you've done, celebrate what God has done, and he's worshiping, and he's singing, and maybe he's got his harp again, he's making a fool of himself, and his wife is not happy about it. Her name's Michelle, and she basically chastises him, and she's like, hey, Stop being weird, man. This is making me uncomfortable. The Joneses down the street are going to notice we're weird. And we're not going to invite to birthdays anymore. And David says this to her. He says, I will celebrate before the Lord. I don't care if this is a weird thing. I don't care if it makes me stand out. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be abased in your eyes. Hey, lovely wife, we're going to just be different. And there's going to be moments where it's going to cost us something. And this moment, it's going to cost you something because you're going to feel uncomfortable, but I need you to hold me accountable to the moment where I need to join you in weirdo land. Because our family, we're going to do something different so that our kids can grow up in a reality that's different than the one that you and I grew up in. Or maybe if you were fortunate enough to grow up in a really healthy home, and my goodness, what an amazing thing to recreate what you got and what you experienced. And men, that burden weighs heavy on our shoulders. There's nothing that you can do more important in this life than to take the minority position of putting your wife and your kids before yourself, putting your faith at the top of the list so that the love that you get from your Heavenly Father, you can give to those around you. There's nothing that comes out of an empty bottle. You have to fill first so that you can pour out into your family and into your home. Because if you and I are going to be the type of men that I believe God wants us to be, and the type of man, imperfect as he was, and imperfect as I am, and as imperfect as you are, as David was, we are going to have to embody these 5 things and to apply them to our life. We're going to have to shake off some of this childish behavior that has corrupted your adult life. Some of you grew up in homes and you were raised by two adults in age, but children in behavior. And I know you want to do something differently, men. You and I have got to ditch the stuff. We got to ditch the stuff that's on this list so that we can step into something bigger and better, not just for us, but man, for your wife and for your kids, or your future wife and your future kids, or for your grandchildren. I don't know what your story is, but there's something that love requires of you in your life and a choice that you need to make to be different. And it's probably going to cost you something, but it will absolutely be worth it. The Apostle Paul wrote this in talking about this shift that has to happen. This is like just so clear from him. He says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I understood like a child. Now I am a man, and I don't act like a child anymore. If we were to rewrite this through the lens of this book and really through the totality of Scripture, Paul would say this: when I was a boy, I spoke like a boy. I had boyish things that I did, completely understandable. I thought like a boy. I understood like a boy, but now I am a boy, and I will choose to act like a boy and allow boyish behavior to be in my adult life no longer. There's nothing else that you've heard me say today. This is the main thing that I just really want to focus in on, is that for me and for you as men, manhood is not about an age that we reach. It's not you're 18, you pass the bullet test, now you're a man. It's the life that you and I choose. And here's just what's true, is that your family and those around you, or the people in your neighborhood, or this world and this church, they need you to choose something better and something more than the path of least resistance. If there's something in you, even right now, that's just apathetic about this, you're like, oh, thanks a lot, John. Now I got to talk to my wife about this on the way home. Like, what if there is something better and something more for you in this life that you get to experience in your marriage and in your relationship, or in a future marriage or a future relationship? What if choosing to live these things out would change the future for your kids? Wouldn't that be worth it? I think it would. So look, here's the 5 marks. We'll put it up there. The 5 marks of a man. A man has a vision for his life. He knows why he's here and what God's put him here to do and to be a part of. A man works. A man adds value to the world around him. A man works for the team and chooses not to be the MVP, understands that sacrifice is at the epicenter of manliness. A man is a protector, not a predator. And a man takes a minority position. These 5 things. You have an opportunity. I have an opportunity this week just to pick one and just to try to work on it in this area. What's the thing for you? You're like, you know what? I could probably work on that. Do it this week. Make it a part of your life. And listen, if you're on an island, I just want to speak specifically to you. If you're like, hey, I don't really know anybody and nobody knows me, I want you to know that that's one of the main reasons why this local church is set up the way that it is. This is a no perfect people allowed church. If you feel like you got to show up on Sundays with your church mask on, please take it off, because it is not good for you and it's not good for the world. It's not helping your marriage and it's definitely not helping your kids. Paul would say to me and to you, be watchful, stand firm in the face, act like men, embody those 5 marks, be strong, and let all that you do be done in love. Fellas, listen, manliness is not something that we put on. In fact, I just want to, for some of the guys in the room, that you would say, you know what, John, my whole life, I kind of didn't feel like a man or feel that manly because I'm not like this stereotypical man. And maybe even you were around church people that made you feel like less than because of just the way that you are. That's the stupidest thing ever. And I just want you to know that if you were treated improperly or made to feel like you were less of a man because you aren't a stereotypical dude, I want you to know that I'm sorry that you were treated that way. And here's what's so cool about our God, is that it doesn't matter what kind of man you are or what you're into, you can embody these 5 things and be a good and honorable and godly man, and to step into something bigger and better than what you're currently experiencing right now. As together we submit and surrender the totality of our life in these 5 things to my King and yours, to a heavenly Father that is not sitting up in the sky looking down on us and being like, you're not a very good man, but instead he sees you and he says, you are my son in whom I am well pleased. So would you step into that? Because I promise you, it'll change everything about your life. But it will cost you something, and it's going to be hard. So here's what I love to do. I want all the men in the room to take a minority position. I'll make you stand up for a second. Even we got some boys in the room. Let's go, boys. We're going to stand up too. And I just want to pray over you in this moment. So we'll take a minority position. If you don't like it, get over yourself and stand up. I appreciate it. Love you all. Say that in love, of course. Because here's what I know, is that it's going to take some courage and some humility to step into the thing that your family needs, that your grandkids need, that your neighborhood needs. Whether you're 10 or 70, there is a special mandate and calling that has been placed on your life by a good and perfect Heavenly Father who sees you and loves you and desperately wants a relationship with you. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I'm so just incredibly grateful for these men who are standing right now. God, I ask that even right now that you would fill them with your love, that they would experience what it looks like to feel loved by you. God, would you give them the strength and the courage and the wisdom and grace and everything that they need to choose to live differently and to lead the way. God, would you stir in their hearts this posture of submission and surrender to you instead of the stuff that maybe we've submitted and surrendered to that has held us captive or is screwing up our relationship right here, right now. God, would you encourage us and give us the strength to step out of isolation, to remind our hearts that what stays in the dark grows in the dark, that we were not meant to do this life alone, that we were made to follow you. Would you help us do that? Would you help me do that and help all of the men that are standing right now to do that as well? God, as we walk into this week, there's going to be a million opportunities for us to choose to pick up boyish behavior that we thought we left behind. God, would you remind our hearts again and again and again that it is not worth it, that there's a better way. It's in your name we pray. Amen.